Within those martial arts that do employ the fist as a striking weapon, there is very often a fundamental allegiance or belief in using a specific facet of the hand. Commonly, if we look at the hand, it is said or regarded as having two fundamental facets. So if we hold our hand here in a vertical axis, and I use this book to illustrate, you notice that the bottom three knuckles of the hand fundamentally exist on one plane. And so when I'm here, I could see that this would be what would be termed a bottom three knuckle or a three knuckle punch. And we notice that in this position, the top knuckle of the hand is very separate, is very far away. And in order to touch it and rock it up, I would now only be impacting with the top two knuckles. And so in that way, we could say that, or it is often said, that there are three knuckle punches and two knuckle punches. Now, if we go into the martial arts and we make some generalizations, typically, karate, for example, is known to use a two knuckle punch. Other styles, Chinese martial arts like Kung Fu, for example, Wing Chun most notably, are said to favor the bottom three knuckles. And the argument generally goes as this. The argument against using the bottom three is that the last two phalanges of the hand, last two bones in the hand, are considerably weaker. And the argument for using the first two is that the first two are much longer and much stronger. This is the argument for that. Bottom knuckle punchers will argue that because three knuckles are being employed and that load is being shared over those three knuckles, that individual weakness of each bone is less relevant. And moreover, they'll often argue that those three knuckles place the arm, if we go back to the book again, they place the arm in a superior axis for pushing. So here we can see that if I don't deform my wrist, I have a very upward-like driving energy. Whereas if I rock over to the first two knuckle, my elbow rises up significantly and it changes my shoulder. So arts like Wing Chun or even Jeet Kune Do that drive and push will very typically use the bottom three knuckles. Whereas other arts like karate, for example, might corkscrew and use those first two. So where do I stand? I have been in my life a Kung Fu instructor, at which time I was an adherent of bottom three knuckle punching, and I spent significant amounts of time conditioning the bottom three. I also hold many advanced ranks in karate and Japanese martial arts, jiu-jitsu, where the top two knuckles are favored. And again, I've gone from hard to soft conditioning on those facets as well. If we look at the majority of studies, research, statistics on injuries to the hand, we see some commonalities. We see that the majority of fractures to the hand do in fact occur to those last two bones in the hand. Now, whether that proves they are in fact weaker, arguably, so, you could say that maybe all of those people just happen to be hitting badly, and when they hit badly, they only end up hitting those two knuckles. A three knuckle puncher might argue that those are breaking because they're not sharing the load on the large mid-knuckle. There can be many arguments there, but there can be no argument that these bones are smaller than the first two. Statistically, they are far more often broken, to the extent that fractures to these bones are known as a boxer's fracture. I often cite the example of Mike Tyson when he got into an argument with Mitch Green pre-fight and struck him while in a clothing store, Dapper Dan in the US. He struck him and he broke these bones to his own hand. So here we have one of the greatest boxers in the world, in the history of boxing, at the peak of his career, fracturing his own hand, generating more power than his hand can take. Now, whether that necessarily shows anything about the three knuckle punch, I don't think it proves authoritatively that is an inferior punch, but I just caution that for most people, it does tend to be more easily injured. And next to those phalanges, the sort of second most injured area of the hand is the thumb itself. What it does show us is that we all have enough power. We all have the ability to generate more than enough power to destroy our own hand. And so when we do punch, I tend to promote using it within the limits of our capacity. Learning how to punch not softly, but with some degree of precision and some degree of control, rather than just madly flailing, unless there is absolutely no other circumstance. I think an argument can be made for a desperate case where you might swing it. What will matter for me is this, and this is somewhat controversial in the Systema world. When we begin punching, I believe it is far more efficient and logical to choose a facet. Choose a facet that feels better for you. I always go back to that quote by Frederick Hertzberg, "You can't blow an uncertain trumpet." If we do not have an absolute certain surface in our hand, we are not as likely to have absolute skill confidence in the beginning, particularly in the beginning. Now, if you come to me and say, Kevin, I've done 10 years of karate and 5 years of silat, and I'm skilled and adept at using both, and I like using 3 sometimes and 2 other times, I would say, great for you, do it. Absolutely do it. My problem is, within the domain of some Systema styles, this notion is presented. Which knuckles do you punch with? We punch with them all. And some people interpret that, A, to mean that they hit with all of them at the same time. And I would submit to you that no matter how meaty somebody's hand might be when they hold it up, if you x-ray that hand, we as humans are all defined by those 2 facets in our hands, in our knuckles. Those facets are there. Look at x-rays of a hand. They are there for all of us, no matter how thick-fingered you might be on the outside. That's absolute. Secondly, I would submit to you that even those that choose to oscillate from one to the other, your faster path to excellence, safely, is to choose one, explore it, and to understand it fully. How I use my hand and what facet I choose, as we've seen, will massively affect not only the position of my forearm and my elbow, my shoulder, but also of myself. And it will totally change the type of tactics that I use.